G'day, Swarley129 here, coming at you with another extension tool that I've made to help everybody in Upland. So today we're talking about an Upland collection optimizer. So if that interests you, stay tuned. Okay, so first of all, you obviously need to go to the extension store and download my Swarley's Upland Optimizer. So just put in Swarley129 or the full name if you want, and you'll find my extension there. At the moment, I've got 3 in there, so Swarley129 will find all 3. But if you just after the optimizer, you'll see that there anyway, or just search that. Install that. Obviously, to come to your manager, you don't need to see it like you are here, but just bear in mind that it's downloaded and installed. So once you've got it installed, all you need to have is Upland open, and then go to your extension menu and bring up the optimizer, which will open up in a new tab, but it is an extension of this tab, so it's just FYI. Now, when you first use it for the first time, it will be totally blank like this, because obviously you're not connected and you haven't downloaded any data. So the first thing you need to do is connect it to your account. So obviously, as it's showing here, it's not linked. All you need to do to link it is hit this button. Now, if you're hitting that button and nothing's happening, it's because Upland's been left idle for too long and it's gone to sleep. So just move it around, wiggle around a bit, and then hit it, and it'll work first go. Now, just ignore the fact that I've got a bit extra data in here at the moment. When you first do it for the very first time, all you will see is the fact that your session is now linked and your username, which will also show here, username, number of properties you have, and the only other bit of information you'll have initially is your multiplier, so the percentage you're earning for the season. All that information is automatic. You don't need to obviously manually put it in. Now, when you do a scan, and to do a scan, all you need to do is hit get collection snapshot, which is exactly that, a snapshot of what you have set in Upland at this minute. So if you do a scan and then afterwards you go and change some collection around, you will need to rescan to capture that snapshot if you want to see the results. Just FYI, if you're doing a scan, I strongly suggest you leave safe mode on. That just limits the scanning requests so Upland servers don't get upset and block you. So it will stop the 429 errors coming through, which is basically warning you that if you don't slow down, you're going to get brickwalled. And that has happened to me in the development, and it's only for a period of time, and then you're good to go. But I strongly recommend just leave safe mode on. Okay, so once you've done a scan, it'll populate with the details in this. Obviously, the bottom's still empty. We'll get to that in a second, but it'll populate with all your properties here and some details. We'll just quickly go through this. Number of collections, self-explanatory. Your mint net worth is the same that you'll see on like UpXland or Leban's Uplytics.org, as well as your net worth, your yield without boost. So that's just every property times your multiplier, and that's your yield without boost. And then obviously what you don't usually see everywhere else is your yield with boost. Now this will be slightly different to what you see in Upland because we calculate it differently. We've taken some shortcuts just to reduce the time it takes to scan. It made a significant difference. And as a result, this will be slightly different, but when I say slightly, I'm talking about 0.1% difference. So small accounts will see virtually no change. Big accounts might see 1,000 or 2,000 out. That's okay because it's just calculated different. It's not an error, it's just calculated differently. But the bottom line is this is our benchmark, the number that we want to beat when we optimize the account. So as long as we get above this number, then whatever that, if it's say 2,000 above this, then we know that we've improved our account by 2,000 with the optimization. Alright, so that's all said and done. So once you've done your scan, you'll get all your details like this. All you need to do is run the optimizer. Now for me, this will take about 30 seconds. And just a rule of thumb too, when you do the full scan of all your collections, it takes about 5 minutes for 1,000 properties. Give or take, every computer's different, but that's kind of the ratio. It seems about right. Anyway, so we're doing our full scan now. That'll take about 20-30 seconds, like I said, so we're finished. So the first thing we want to look at is just to see the results. So we'll get to all the properties in a second, but we just want to see the results. So we started with that as my current yield, and with the optimization, we've now increased our yield by up to that, which is a net gain of just over or just under 16,000 UpX. Now, just FYI, for this video purposes, I deliberately broke some collections just so I could have some information and data here to show off. So I'm not really that poorly optimized. I'm just doing it for demo. All right. So, but you might scan this and you might see, okay, well, I've only got 209 collections, but I can actually make another 6 collections that's showing me here. I can potentially increase my yield to that much with a net gain of this, which is a 1% gain on my yield altogether. So it's not nothing. 1%, better than a poke in the eye. And your projected yields just basically your ratios from 15.9 with all your collections. It actually bumps it up to 25. So anyway, that's neither here or there. All right, so looking over here, we've got all our properties. Now I've grouped them into the first category being all our global collections, so ones that are not specifically for a particular city. So the ones that show up in pretty much every single category when you go into Upland, basically. So they're in the first one, and then all the rest are alphabetical order as you go through. Okay, it's a little bit annoying they're not in the same order as Upland, but it's automatic to have them in alphabetical order. It's not automatic to have them in Upland's order, so it's going to stay this way. I'm sorry if that upsets you. Alright, so it does look a bit daunting when you first run it because you can see lots of ticks and crosses. So the ticks are obviously exactly what you would think they are. They're properties that are all good and you don't need to touch. So we can actually filter those out by removing the ticks, and then we can see just the ones that are requiring action. Now when I say requiring action, it just means they're suggestions. You don't need to do anything it suggests. It's just going, hey, if you did this, potentially you earn more UpX. So as I said, I've deliberately broken some collections and got some weird stuff going on just to show some data. So here it's showing, so over here it said we want to make 30 changes to get this result that we're talking about. These are 3 of those 30 changes. So I need to sub these 3 out, sub these 3 out and put these 3 in here. These properties are always listed in from high mint to low mint every time, so there should be some consistency there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're subbing the 3 out to be the bottom 3, which it is in this case. It's just that, you know, it could be one from the top that goes to a better collection somewhere else and everything else moves up and another one comes in the bottom. Anyway, that's neither here or there. So it's just showing you, so the green are good to go, the red ones are saying, hey, there's some attention here if you want. And that's, you can go through and look at all the different collections. Like here's one that I deliberately broke, so they're not in the collection. I've taken them out just so you can say currently not in the collection, chuck them in there. So nice, simple, easy fix. Now to go put something in a collection, so this one's Chicago South Shore, so we'll have a look at that. All you need to do is click on the address. So that'll copy that address. You don't need to like highlight it, Control C or anything. Just click on it. That'll automatically copy it. We can go to our collection. So Chicago South Shore. Just reminding myself. Alright, so where are we? Chicago, South. Alright, South Shore, and then we can just tap it. Okay, well, that's obviously the easy way. I didn't mean to do that. Because there's only 3, it makes it super easy to find. What I wanted to show was the fact that now with Upland's filter, you can just type. So we've already copied it when we clicked on it, so we can just type in the address, and even if you had a million in there, it'll come up straight away. Thank you, Upland, for bringing that filter out. Alright, so going back, so that's as easy as it is. So even though you got 30 changes, it literally could only take you 2-3 minutes to actually make all those 30 changes. So thank you, Upland. It used to take basically a week. So massive improvement there. And FYI, I didn't create this because Upland did the update. I was actually creating this before Upland did the update. It was just a coincidence. Anyway, so the other thing I want to show on here too is with these collections. So, okay, it's telling you to make, obviously this is a red collection, so clearly you'd want to normally put that in a red collection, but just say for argument's sake I didn't. I wanted to lock those properties in the City Pro. I didn't want the optimizer to move them. I could literally just hit the padlock and then hit rescan and it'll redo the optimization, but not moving these 3. So it'll find the other 2 best results for this collection and then the best results for everything else. Now I can tell you now that if I do that, that sends basically this down to about 100 UpX instead of 15,000. That's how much of a difference one or a couple of changes can make. So the padlock works really good if for some reason you want to keep a property in a collection. So that might be for an ornament challenge. You might have a property that's only worth slightly less than the one that it's suggesting. But because the one that you're suggesting might be a, say a speedway, which you can't decorate, but the smaller one, you know, it might be an apartment building that you can decorate, you might want that in there, something like that. Another reason why you might want to lock a property, so if you come down to the bottom here, you've got properties that are not in collections, they're just all your spare leftover properties. You might have a property for some reason you just don't ever want to be in a collection. I don't know what the reason would be, you just don't want it in a collection. So you could come down here and just go to Birmingham, like whatever you've got, and you can lock it, and then when you run the scan, the optimization, it will not put that, will not consider that in a collection. It'll just lock it out. That might be relevant for people who have the old school collections that are still kind of locked into those collections. Like I don't know all the names of them. they don't show up on the APIs, but if you have one, you know what I'm talking about. You might want to lock those so you don't accidentally ever break that and put them in a different collection. So that's a little tip there and a little helpful thingy. The only last thing on here that I think I really want to show you is very quickly the collection's not completed. So any property that you have that might be eligible for a collection. Obviously, many properties are eligible for many collections, or most properties are eligible for many collections. But if you've got like one property that is eligible for a collection, it might show up here. So an example here, I've got a Manhattan property. It's showing me that I've got one Manhattan. I need 3, but I'm obviously 2 short. I've only got 1 eligible. You might have the case if you've got 2. It also might be one of those property. You might have an ultra rare property, but you've only got 1 of them, but you've got the 3 for the rare property collection. So you're aware that you're not probably not getting the other 2 ultra rares because it's going to cost you a bucket. So you just ignore it anyway. But it might highlight something that you weren't aware of. Just a little bit of extra information. So that's about it for the optimizer itself. Now I'm just going to move on to the last little bit, which is the fact that we are in beta mode. So anyone using the optimizer at the minute, it's effectively a pioneer. It's not going to affect your account. Nothing you can do on the optimizer is going to change Upland in any shape, form, or whatever. All it does is collect the data and then gives you suggestions what to do. Nothing's automatic. You can't click buttons here and break Upland on the other side. However, if you do run the optimizer and then you do find that there's any problems, something hasn't worked right, it's broken a collection, it's trying to make a suggestion that's just not valid, please let me know so I can try and look at it and fix it. A screenshot at very least with a detailed explanation as to what's going on. But if you are willing, and I understand this is a bit of a touchy subject, there is the option here to download the data. This data is literally just the data with the optimizer. So it's all your properties. The only thing that's in this data that you can't get publicly anyway, and I'll be quite honest and upfront about this, is what properties that you currently have in a collection. So that is not publicly available to anybody else, as most of you will be aware. So that's why this extension is linked to your account. So that way we can see, or you can see when you're using it, what properties you have in a collection and how to make it better. So if you do choose to download the data, I mean, you can use the data yourself to look at and whatnot. It's because it's only there at the minute because it's in beta mode. So I plan to have that obviously taken away as a future point. But whilst we're still in testing, and I've probably only had about half a dozen accounts that have tested it so far, so I would appreciate some more data. But yeah, especially if you have any sort of dramas and you're willing to download that data, like I said, check it out, see that it's got absolutely nothing in there of any sensitive nature. It doesn't capture any of your personal data and nothing to do with Upland's account or anything like that. All it is the property details. But if you're at any stage uncomfortable with sending that to me, totally understand, and that's fine. The other thing too is if you happen to be a huge account, say 3,000 properties or more, I've had a lot of testing sort of under that 2,000, so I'm looking for some bigger accounts just to see how the performance, even if you do a scan, it comes back with a positive result and you get an extra 20, 30,000 UPX or whatever, awesome. But I would love to see how that performed on your account, so I can actually process that through AI and look at how the optimizer performed on your account and if it left anything on the table. To date, it's not leaving. I think the most it's left on the table is for about 1,000 UPX for a 1.8 million income account. So obviously very minimal. So it's just for me to be able to test and figure out if there's any improvements that we can do. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to reach out and ask me, preferably on Discord, but obviously in-game or X is possible too. And yeah, that's about it. So have an awesome day. Happy optimizing, and I'll catch you all later. Have a good one.